Say it with me, everyone.
3 Pokemon!
That's right, on October 12, 2013 worldwide, Game Freak delivered something we'd all wanted for a long time. At last, they were done with the DS games. About time. And we finally saw a full 3D core Pokemon title in the form of Pokemon X and Y for the 3DS. And on October 32nd of the following year, people in an alternate reality saw the release of Pokemon Z. But here on Earth 616, there was no Pokemon Z. All the signs were there. There was Zygarde, there was Pokemon the series, XYZ the series. Where is it? Where's Z? I'm waiting. Ow. Man, I can still remember seeing the announcement trailer for the first time back in January of 2013. I've never not been a fan of Pokemon, but after 15 plus years of it at this moment in time, it would definitely take more than just the prospect of yet another new Pokemon game to get me excited. The Gen 5 games were evidence of this. But after seeing the trailer, my hype for a new Pokemon game leveled up to 100. And with that, it's safe to say that I had some unreasonably high expectations for Pokemon X and Y. But this unreasonably high expectation only really pertained to the graphics. While it didn't quite meet those lofty expectations, this isn't really a fault of the 3DS hardware. In fact, the battles showcase some of the most impressive visuals on the system. The Pokemon models had a high standard to reach if they were to match the same level of expressiveness of the DS's Pokemon sprites, and the art department absolutely nailed it. Pokemon models are large, well detailed, and completely faithful to Ken Sugimori's design. All 721 Pokemon have unique idle animations, attack animations, reaction animations, and more. The team opted for a cel-shaded art style this time around, which works great. Although characters are mostly formed of patches of solid colours and black outlines, this style is very flattering to the low resolution cartoony visuals, making them pop off the screen. Although the 3D effect most certainly helps in that regard. Actually, maybe not, as the stereoscopic 3D effect in battles dips into the screen rather than protrudes, which I think I prefer. And quick side note, stereoscopic 3D is almost exclusively used in battles, with only a few select overworld areas utilising the 3DS's main USP. 3D can have an impact on the game's frame rate, and it isn't uncommon to see the frame rate dip below its 30 FPS target, especially when there are more Pokemon on the screen at once, even when 3D is turned off. It's clear to see that the fidelity of the visuals in battles was definitely pushing the 3DS. Putting aside battles, the first impression of the 3D visuals is excellent. Professor Sycamore is the first character we see. He's a well-dressed man with realistic body proportions and looks about as good as the Pokemon do in the battles. Once we transition from the cutscene to the main game, I was a little disappointed. The detailed and striking character models in the cutscene are done away with. After our hero quits their bed, we see that they are a shrunken down and simplified facsimile of the character seen in the cutscene. I know this is how it was done in every Pokemon game prior, but they were all 2D games, so it was expected. In X and Y, we got a tease of how good the characters could look before this is snatched away from us and replaced with something not nearly as appealing. It's not the end of the world or anything, and I definitely got used to this look, but I can't say I like it. It's acceptable. Almost all of the game's cutscenes use these squished, expressionless character models, which is to be expected, but it means that most of the communication between characters is done through on-screen text, rather than character gestures, facial expressions, or anything like that. Again, this was how it was in prior games, so I can't really fault X and Y too much for being the same. Thankfully, some of the main cast members do have realistically proportioned models for battles, and it's always a treat to see them. The way that the world of Kalos is presented isn't at all what I'd anticipated. In fact, despite being in 3D, it is really similar to the 2D games that came before it. It's still tile based, and using the D-pad will provide the same type of control as previous games. Tapping up will move one tile up, tapping down will move one tile down. But get this, tapping up and right at the same time will move diagonally. Oh my god, revolutionary. After acquiring the roller skates and bike, it is possible to move omnidirectionally using the circle pad, which at least makes movement feel less robotic at the cost of precision. The camera is also way closer to previous games than I'd expected. We're still dealing with a fixed camera. In most areas, the camera angle is similar to that of the DS games, so these games are still somewhat top down. But the camera is a little less fixed, with different routes or small sections having a different camera angle to the default. This was in the Gen 5 games, but you'll see it a lot more in X and Y. Like Gen 5's Castelia City, Gen 6 has Lumiose City, which is its new visual showpiece. Lumiose City is unlike any other area in the game in that the camera is completely behind the shoulder and you have complete freedom of movement. Lumiose City was in a lot of the game's advertising. It's a big 3D city made to wow the player and is Game Freak's way of flexing its entrance into a new dimension. In reality, it's alright. Sure, it does look nice and there are a bunch of facilities that you can mess around with. It's just a pain to navigate, with a lot of the buildings and entrances looking the same. Outside of Lumio City, the rest of the world is kind of forgettable. Many of the routes and towns don't do much to stand out from the others. Because everything was dumped into the capital city, none of the other towns really have any facilities that make them worth revisiting. And for that reason, I can't tell you many of their names. I only remember Comfria town because it's right next to the daycare and Battle Chateau. In terms of optional dungeons to explore, there isn't much of that here besides the Terminus Cave, which granted is a fun labyrinth with some nice goodies. I can name some cool locations in Kalos, they're not all stinkers. There's the Tower of Mastery, Pokemon Village, the Pokeball Factory, Glittering Cave, Shabano Castle, and the aforementioned Lumio City and Terminus Cave. The gym interiors are some of the most fun in the series and do a wonderful job of utilising the new 3D visuals to be as visually pleasing as possible. The Pokemon League looks damn fine too. No wonder it made such an awesome stage in Smash. Kalos has its moments, but most of the places I haven't mentioned here are just average. I also find most of the music outside of battle to be pretty average too, which is a shame, because Pokemon soundtracks usually excel in all areas. None of the music is bad per se, but a lot of it isn't memorable. The few tracks that are memorable though are awesome. The later routes, Geosenge Town and Annister Town, are all wonderful tracks, and the Kalos Power Plant theme has quickly become one of my favourite songs from Pokemon. Almost all of the battle themes from X and Y are excellent as usual, nothing to worry about there. So the region of Kalos has some highs and some middles and is just okay overall, but perhaps Pokemon X and Y could make up for it with its story. It had to follow in the mighty footsteps of the exceptional story of Black and White. Was there any chance that X and Y could reach the high level of quality as those games? Probably not. The game begins the same as all Pokemon games do. The protagonist wakes up one day and decides, okay, today is adventure time. Then they quickly pick up their first Pokemon and meet their rival. But the rival is handled somewhat differently in X and Y. You do have a main rival, in my case it was Serena as I chose to play as a boy, but the rival is part of a bigger group, as are you. Your group of 5 friends sets off on a journey together and will frequently meet up to battle, chat, and wake up a sleeping Pokemon or two. None of these characters are very deep or have that much impact on anything. Your rival is there to check your strength, Trevor is basically there to remind you to keep filling up the Pokedex, and Tierno is annoying. Shauna is probably the best one outside of the rival. She's energetic, friendly, and not afraid to stick her nose in the face of danger. Individually, these characters aren't anything special, but I do like them as a group. They're on the same journey for different reasons, even if Tierno's reason is annoying. It's nice to check in with them every once in a while, and because they're all such nice characters, it extrudes this ultra-friendly vibe that never dissipates at any point in the story. The opening hour or so of the game is so jolly. The Santaloon Forest is an obvious callback to Viridian Forest. That alone got the nostalgia juices flowing, but seeing how giddy these kids are as they get their first taste of Pokemon took me back to when I first played Pokemon Blue. The evil team this time around, Team Flare, are not the best, which is a nice way of saying they are the worst. They show up rather sparingly throughout the story and it feels like their part wraps up before it even got going. It's not until the end of their arc that their motives are revealed, and then they're quickly ended. Team Flare's motives are super heavy to the point where they seem unbelievable and outlandish, and it really doesn't match their goofy personality. The only part of this plot thread that I liked was the history that it taught me and the ties that the boss Lysander and this mysterious man had to the past. That stuff was actually quite interesting. Perhaps we could have done with more of that and maybe done away with Team Flare altogether, but I know Pokemon would never do that. This part of the story doesn't feel like a main focus of X and Y, as like I said, the evil team doesn't show up all that often. Only a few times. It's kind of back to basics, where the main drive through the game is the gym challenge. The pacing of the gyms is kind of strange. It only takes a short amount of time to earn the first badge, and there is a huge gap between that and the second gym. By the time I got to the second gym, my Pokemon were already in the level 25 to 30 range. For context, in the Gen 2 games, my Pokemon were around this level when I was fighting the 5th gym leader. And I wasn't power leveling, the second gym leader's Pokemon were level 25. The gap between the first and the second gyms is an outlier, however. After the second gym, the rest of them come at a rather rapid pace, with not a crazy amount to do in between. A few caves and some encounters with Team Flare are often all that stand between the player and the next gym. There isn't much backtracking or sidestepping, you just go from place to place until the credits roll. And there's never a reason to stop and grind because these games are easy peasy. Easy peasy. So easy. Pokemon games aren't really all that challenging. They are designed for people of all ages after all, but the Gen 6 games are just so easy. A big contributing factor to this is the redesigned EXP share. It's now a key item that can be toggled on and off. With it toggled on, all Pokemon in your party gain 50% of experience even if they didn't participate in battle. Plus, you now also get experience when you capture a Pokemon, whereas before you didn't. Pokemon's levels will be going up left, right and centre. It's a huge time saver when it comes to leveling. The thing with this is that if you're taking the game at a normal pace, it's likely that you'll be many levels above the opponent's Pokemon at all times. I'm not sure if the development team underestimated how high the players' levels will be throughout, or if they purposefully made it this easy. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if they purposefully made it easy, and you know what, the fact that it is so easy isn't a negative to me. It's things like the lax difficulty and the jolliness of many of the characters that give me the impression that Pokemon X and Y are just supposed to be these chill games. Another thing that gives me this impression, and what is my absolute favourite thing about these games, is the sheer amount of Pokemon that can be found in the Kalos region. The Hoenn Pokédex had 202 Pokemon, Platinum's Sinnoh Dex had 210, Black 2 and White 2's Unova Dex had 301, not small numbers by any means, but the Kalos Dex had a grand total of 457 Pokemon, almost all of which are available before the post game. The Dex is so big that they had to split it into 3 parts to make it less overwhelming. The cast is like a greatest hits of all the generations. You even get 2 starter Pokemon, obtaining one of the Kanto starters upon reaching Lumiose City. Each new area brings with it a ton of new Pokemon to collect. I remember when I played the game at launch, it took me 30 hours to get to the second gym because I spent so much time trying to collect as many Pokemon as I went. Thanks to the EXP share, it was super easy to evolve them as I went, and I could constantly be rotating the members of my team to fill up the decks. The EXP share also means that you can pretty much stick any Pokemon in your party at any time, even if they're low level, and it won't take an absurd amount of time for them to catch up. I found it to be so much fun going through my boxes upon boxes of Pokemon and being like, who do I feel like using today? And because there are so many Pokemon, all of the opposing trainers have a varied selection. You can go through some gyms fighting all the trainers and not see a single repeated Pokemon. Gen 6 did include the least amount of new Pokemon by far, only 69 at the time of launch with 3 added in through later events. And you know, this was totally fine since they added so many of the older ones for you to find throughout the main story. Plus, there were 2 major additions that shook up how we could use older Pokemon. The first of which is the new Fairy type. After 3 generations without a new type, we finally saw a new one, the Fairy type. It's a great and useful new type, being super effective against fighting, dark and dragon. And the inclusion of it made for some excellent new Pokemon, Flabébé, Sylveon and everyone's favourite, Klefki. It wasn't just new Pokemon. In Gen 2 with the introduction of Steel and Dark, the only Gen 1 Pokemon that adopted a new type were Magnemite and Magneton, becoming Electric and Steel type. With the Fairy type however, over 20 Pokemon across all previous generations added it as a second type or outright switched to Fairy type. That's a massive amount. And I've got to say, my favourite type used to be Water, but since Gen 2 it's been Fairy. You can't tell me that Sylveon isn't the best evolution, I won't hear it. The second major addition that revamped some of the old Pokemon was Mega Evolution. A select few pre-Gen 6 Pokemon can Mega Evolve once the player has found the corresponding Mega Stone. Mega Evolution allows the Pokemon to temporarily evolve one stage further. If you've ever seen Digimon, it's Digimon. A Mega Evolved Pokemon is a bit more powerful, can be a different type and sports a swanky new design, which is honestly the most appealing thing about the Mega Evolution concept. I wouldn't say that many of the Pokemon look better after Mega Evolving, most of them just look weird. A kind of dumb, fun weird. Personally, I think Mega Evolution is just a gimmick gameplay wise. Only one Pokemon can be evolved once per battle and you have to sit through this animation every time it happens. It's not much use during the story as the games are easy enough without giving your character more power. But Mega Evolutions do add a little something to multiplayer battles. I do want to quickly talk about the new Pokemon. Seeing as there aren't that many this time around, it was less likely that we'd get many bad ones. And there really aren't any, except maybe Binacle. Don't know what happened there. Gen 6 does contain my favourite fossil Pokemon, Amora and Aurorus. Of course, there's the best evolutions, Sylveon. Trevenant and Gourgeist are pretty dope. And shoutouts to Inkay, the Pokemon with the funniest method of evolution. Level it to 30 while holding the 3DS upside down. And I can't believe that while writing this I only just noticed that Malamar is an Inkay upside down but a bit meaner looking. Hey, don't judge me, I was only 18 when these games came out, okay? 457 is the number of Pokemon in the Kalos Dex, but it is not the number of Pokemon available in this game. It's much higher than that in fact. Upon completing the game, an area known as the Friend Safari is unlocked. Every trainer has a Friend Safari type tied to them, with 2 or 3 Pokemon that can show up depending on if they've beaten the game or not. If they're on your friends list, you have access to their Safari. Pokemon that aren't part of the Kalos Dex can show up here. So if you're popular, congratulations, here's a Camerupt. For those solo players, there's always the option of transferring your Pokemon up from the Generation 5 games, in what is perhaps the easiest method of Pokemon transfer. Pokemon Bank is a 3DS app that allows one to store 3,000 Pokemon from the 3DS games. PokeTransporter allows for a box of Pokemon from any of the Gen 5 games to be transported into Pokemon Bank. You can then move them from Bank into your Gen 6 game. It's pretty simple, but here's the dumb part. Why is there always a catch? PokeTransporter is free, so you can transfer Pokemon from Gen 5 into Bank at no cost. But Pokemon Bank has a subscription fee of $5 a year, which you have to pay for to take the transported Pokemon out. Even if you're not planning to use the storage features, you have to pay for it. One day we'll find the perfect method of transferring Pokemon between generations. Let's pray that Pokemon Home is it. The post-game of Gen 6 is all about completing the Pokédex. That is to say, there isn't much more besides that. There's the Battle Maison, this game's version of the Battle Tower, plus the quest for Mega Evolution Stones and the Looker side quest, but that's about it. I'm sure this would be disappointing for some people, and rightfully so, but filling up the decks in the Gen 6 games is so much fun, both in part to just how many there are, and how easy it is to level up and evolve them now. Pokemon X was one of the 2 games that I managed to obtain a complete national Pokédex in, and I had a blast doing it. You know, I can remember when I was 18, after these games were announced, I thought this was going to be a massive turning point in the series. Once Pokemon has gone 3D, it's going to feel completely unlike the older games. But I was severely wrong. The biggest change in X and Y gameplay wise was Mega Evolution. A cool feature, but something that I could honestly take or leave. I suppose EXP share did significantly impact the undertaking of leveling Pokemon, but any other changes or new features were pretty minor. One of these new features is Horde battles. Occasionally, wild Pokemon will attack you in a group of 5. This is kind of neat and sees the player make more use of multi-hitting moves. But when you run into a horde of Roggenrollers, each with the sturdy ability and the move Sand Attack, you can see where this gets kind of annoying. And if you did want to catch one of the Pokemon, you have to knock out the other 4 first, which can be tedious. It is possible, however, for a rare Pokemon of a different species to accidentally show up during a Horde battle, and it's definitely exciting when that happens. And I know some people liked Hordes as a good method of shiny hunting. To shake up trainer battles, Sky battles were introduced. These are battles where only certain Pokemon can participate, namely flying Pokemon or some that can levitate. These aren't something I enjoyed all that much. If you're not prepared for them, chances are you'll only have 1 or 2 Pokemon in your party that can take part in these, which can feel like an unnecessary handicap. Neither of these features ended up making a return in future games. There are 2 new features in the Gen 6 games that allow you to raise your Pokemon very differently to battling. First, there's the Pokemon Ami. The Pokemon Ami allows for petting, feeding, and playing simple minigames with your Pokemon to raise their affection. It's just an unimportant side thing that you can completely ignore. Raising a Pokemon's affection does grant it slight bonuses in battle though, like allowing to land critical hits easier, but nothing too major. Super Training is a surprisingly fun minigame in which you have to shoot balls into a balloon bot's nets, if that made any sense. Super Training has a more direct impact on Pokemon growth as it raises their effort values, allowing you to increase a desired stat of a Pokemon. To be honest, I didn't indulge in these features all too much as the rewards weren't appealing to me, but I'm sure some people will get use out of them. And the Super Training minigame could have sucked, but it doesn't. The character customization is something that is very welcomed. For the first time in the series, it's possible to change the player character's look. At the start of the game, players are presented with 3 male options and 3 female options that are all very similar, with the only differences being hair colour, eye colour and skin complexion. A little ways into the game, players are given the option to change their eye colour, get a haircut and get their hair coloured at a hairdresser's, and buy new clothes and accessories at the boutique. The skin tones and haircuts are very limited, especially for boys, but there are a decent number of clothing options, so you'll likely find something that tickles your fancy. The character customization is limited and has a long way to go, but I'm definitely glad it's here. It makes the games more personable. Pokemon protagonists are silent, blank slates anyway, so we might as well be able to make them look the way we want. The area in which the Gen 6 games improve leaps and bounds over any of the prior gens is its communication features, mainly the online front. Of course, it definitely helps that 3DS games still have their online functionality intact, and there is still plenty of people chipping away at their Pokédexes in these games it seems. Connecting to the internet allows players to communicate with friends and plenty of strangers through the passerby part of the menu. This could be to simply give someone an O power, which gives them small bonuses such as temporary stat increases or higher capture chances. Or you can invite people to trade or battle. Of course, other people can invite you to do all these things or gift you O powers. Or just say, nice. I like being in the middle of an important story section and some random person's like, hey, you want to trade? Yes, of course I want to trade. These features are available both online and through local wireless, but there are a couple features exclusive to online. The battle spot option is essentially a matchmaking option for online battles. But if your name is Jamie Payne, watch out as you will get your ass kicked. An absolutely fantastic feature is Wonder Trade. Essentially, two players are paired together to trade Pokemon, but they don't know what has been offered. It's like opening up a card pack or a loot box, only it's pay what you want. Of course, you won't always get fair trades. For example, whoever gave me this Excadrill got stitched up. Wonder Trade is a simple idea, but boy do I love it so. And it's not exactly new to these games, but here is a look at the GTS. It's trash. I swear there was a time when it was good. The Generation 6 games don't have the best story, they don't have the best region, they don't have the best music, and the visuals outside of battles are underwhelming. Coming out of this playthrough, I noticed this more than I ever had in the past. Yet they are still some of my favourites in the series, maybe in my top 3 or top 2, and I think the reason is that these games are just so cozy. I love just how many Pokemon there are and how well they've been dispersed among the world. My favourite thing in Pokemon games is collecting, and I cannot stress enough how much fun it was to take my time finding so many different new and old Pokemon in every location and being able to constantly rotate my party. The big bad threat of Team Flare destroying the world is kind of pushed aside. Most of the time the rest of the characters just want to share their love of Pokemon. This happens while other actual human beings are sharing their love of Pokemon with you, thanks to the online features. It's low stress, good vibes all around. And the games are really easy, so I would definitely recommend it to people looking for their first Pokemon game to jump into. Thanks so much for watching, that's the 6th generation down. Just Gen 7 to go before we hop into the newly released Pokemon Sword and Shield. So be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss those. As always, Twitter and Twitch links are in the description if you want to go follow me over there. And have fun playing Pokemon Sword and Shield. They're out now, baby, yeah!